In a courtroom, respect is everything. But when one woman, accustomed to privilege, crosses the line, the consequences are swift and unforgiving. This story begins with a wealthy white woman who thought her status could shield her from the law. But when she disrespects a black judge, everything changes. The tension in the room is palpable, and what follows is a lesson in humility she'll never forget. The judge, calm yet unwavering, isn't about to let her get away with it. As the case unfolds, it's clear that this isn't just about legal proceedings, it's about dignity, justice, and the power of accountability. Stay tuned as we reveal how this moment of arrogance leads to a turning point that leaves the woman stunned and questioning everything she thought she knew about power and privilege. What will happen next? You won't believe the twist in this unforgettable courtroom drama. The woman in question, Amanda, had always been accustomed to getting what she wanted. Born into a life of luxury, she had never faced a real challenge. She was used to walking into rooms with an air of superiority, assuming that her wealth and status could silence anyone who stood in her way. That day in court was no different. She sat confidently, almost dismissively, as the judge, a respected black woman named Judge Harper, took her seat. Amanda's case was minor, a dispute over a business deal, but she had no intention of making it easy. As the judge began speaking, Amanda interrupted with a sarcastic remark, testing the boundaries of authority in the room. It was a subtle insult at first, but it didn't go unnoticed. The courtroom went silent, the tension thick. Judge Harper's calm demeanor didn't falter, but the atmosphere shifted. The battle had begun, and no one knew where it would lead. Judge Harper took a deep breath, her gaze unwavering. Amanda, however, seemed oblivious to the gravity of the moment. With every word she spoke, the tension in the room grew. She had a sharp tongue, dismissing the proceedings as though they were beneath her. "This is a waste of my time," Amanda scoffed, her eyes flicking around the room, almost daring anyone to challenge her. Her tone was condescending, and it didn't escape the notice of the other people present, including the prosecutor, who shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Judge Harper's silence was deliberate. She didn't react right away, but her mind was racing. She had dealt with disrespect before, gender, race, and class all intertwined in a society that often underestimated her. Yet, Amanda's attitude was different. It wasn't just arrogance, it was a blatant disregard for authority. The judge wasn't about to let that slide, but she had to choose her next move carefully. Meanwhile, the courtroom's other occupants, an eclectic mix of professionals, were already whispering. Some were nervous, unsure of what would happen next. Others, particularly the few who had faced similar prejudices, couldn't help but feel a sense of justice stirring in their hearts. The case itself seemed almost irrelevant now. This was something bigger. It was a moment where power dynamics and societal boundaries were being tested, and everyone could feel it. Amanda's lawyers exchanged uneasy glances, but she dismissed their concern with a wave of her hand. She had always been the one in control, the one who dictated the pace of things. But today the game was different. Judge Harper's cool composure gave nothing away, but those who were paying attention could see the slow, deliberate way she was collecting her thoughts. And in the quiet that followed, something unexpected happened. Amanda's confidence faltered just for a second. She caught the judge's eye, and for the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. The silence in the room was heavy now, and it seemed like every second stretched into eternity. The tension was palpable. The stage was set, but no one knew how this story would unfold. Would Amanda finally recognize the line she crossed? Or would she continue to push, testing the limits of her own privilege? And more importantly, what would Judge Harper do next? The answers weren't clear, but one thing was certain: this moment would change everything. The room seemed to hold its breath as Amanda's casual dismissiveness lingered in the air. Her hand rested on the edge of the table, fingers tapping absent-mindedly, but her eyes were no longer as confident as they had been. It was as if she could feel a shift, an invisible tension, building with every second, that she couldn't escape. Judge Harper didn't speak for a moment, but her gaze never wavered. The calmness in her demeanor was almost unnerving. Amanda shifted in her seat, her jaw tightening. She couldn't understand it. Why wasn't the judge rattled? Didn't Harper see who she was? Didn't she know Amanda's family name? The thought flickered through her mind like a dangerous spark. Maybe it was time to push harder, show that she could take control of the room, that her status was all that mattered. She leaned forward, her voice dripping with scorn. "Are you seriously going to let this drag on all day? I'm wasting my time here. We both know how this is going to end." The courtroom fell into a stunned silence. Even her own lawyers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, glancing nervously between Amanda and Judge Harper. The prosecutor, who had remained largely silent until now, shifted his posture slightly, waiting for a cue. But Judge Harper's eyes remained steady. Her lips barely moved as she spoke, her voice low but firm. "The court is not here to serve your convenience, Miss Daniels. It is here to serve justice, and I would suggest you remember that." The words struck like a whip. Amanda's eyes widened. She wasn't used to being spoken to like that, especially not by someone she thought was beneath her. Her face flushed, the tension mounting as the full weight of the situation began to settle in. This wasn't a game she could win with money or charm. As if on cue, a murmur spread through the courtroom. Some people were starting to notice this wasn't just about a court case anymore. It was about respect. It was about power. And Amanda, for the first time, wasn't sure she had either. She took a deep breath, trying to regain control. "You're making a mistake." Amanda, now visibly shaken, looked from the man to the judge, then to her lawyers, who were equally clueless. This wasn't just about a courtroom drama anymore. This was something deeper, something that threatened to expose her entire life in front of everyone. She had spent years building her image, carefully curating every interaction, every moment of her public persona. Now, it felt like everything she'd worked for was about to be ripped apart. The man's words hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. "We'll need a full investigation into Miss Daniels' dealings," he said, turning his gaze back to Amanda. "And the truth will come out, whether you like it or not." The shock that rippled through the courtroom was palpable. Amanda's face drained of color, and for the first time, she could no longer rely on her status to escape. The stakes had just been raised to a level she couldn't have anticipated. She had no idea what this man knew or how deep the investigation would go. But one thing was clear: her privileged world was beginning to crack. The question now was whether she could hold it all together, or if the walls would collapse under the pressure. The man's words hung in the air like a ticking clock, and for a moment, Amanda felt the walls close in around her. She could feel the sweat starting to form on her brow as her mind scrambled for answers. Who was this man, and what did he know? The courtroom was a cage now, and she was trapped in it. Judge Harper, ever composed, turned her attention to the man with a slight nod. "Proceed," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "We'll hear you out." Amanda's eyes darted around the room, but no one was speaking. It was as though everyone was waiting for something to happen. But just when it seemed like the final blow was about to land, something unexpected happened. The man paused, glancing up at the judge. There was a subtle shift in his expression, a hesitation that wasn't there before. Then he spoke again, his voice much softer, almost apologetic. "I should have mentioned one more thing," he said, turning back to Amanda. "The person behind this investigation, it's someone you know. Someone you've trusted for years." Amanda's mind raced. What was he talking about? Who else knew? The man's eyes narrowed as he looked at her. "It's your father. He's the one who turned you in." The words hit Amanda like a ton of bricks. Her father, the man who had always been her rock, her guide, the one who had supported every decision she made. The realization crashed over her with brutal force. She had been so focused on her own power, her own position, that she hadn't seen the betrayal coming. Amanda's knees buckled as the room around her seemed to tilt. She barely registered Judge Harper's final words, the sting of them cutting through her fog of shock. "You have two choices, Miss Daniels. You can face the truth, or you can continue to run from it. But either way, the game is over. The final twist had changed everything. Amanda's life, her future, her carefully constructed image, all of it had just been exposed, and it was her own family that had taken her down. The very people she trusted the most had decided that the truth was worth more than the lies she told.